had not seen me in quite some time, mainly because life has kind of gotten in the way. But for those of you who don't really know why you're tuning in or what the show is a live podcast called The Open Heart Collective. The Open Heart Collective was started back in March of 2018 as a way for entrepreneurs, creatives, musicians, those who have struggled with mental health for a long period of time, to really be a safe place for people to share their stories, because we all know somebody who's struggling. And if we had more safe places for those people to allow themselves to feel vulnerable in, we would have the ability to potentially end suicide and break the stigma around mental health. So each and every one of these shows is not just me proliferating for an hour. It's me having a genuine, raw, real life conversation with an amazing human being who's accomplished a great deal. And with that comes them sharing their story. So we want to break this conversation down into 3 parts. What is Jordan's story? Number 1. Number 2, what are those specific things he's had to overcome in his life to get to where he is now? And last but certainly not least, what's exciting in his world? Because any mental health story, we cannot just focus on the negative or the dark. We have to focus on the positive too. And what happens when you push through those dark times. So now, with no further ado, I would like to introduce my first guest back as we get into season 3 here, Jordan Gross. I had the distinct pleasure to talk to Jordan a few weeks ago and was so amped to have him on the show. So Jordan, introduce yourself.
Ryan, what is up, my man? I'm honored, privileged, so happy to be here on Open Heart Collective Season 3, Episode 1.
Oh, it's Episode 12, but we'll go.
Episode 12, sorry. Thank you so much for having me on. Truly, I know you haven't been here in a while, and it's truly it's quite nice of you to have me on as your first interview back. So that means a lot to me.
Absolutely, it's my honor.
Yeah. So how are you doing today?
Oh, you know what? It's to make a very long story short, it has been a crazy past few months. The last episode aired probably mid-January. Yeah. Since then, for those of you guys who don't know, since then the podcast obviously took a break, but I dismantled and relaunched a new company. I dismantled an old one and relaunched a new one. I've been back from South by Southwest in Los Angeles and various other things for the record label. It has been a chaotic start to 2019, but I've also had the opportunity to speak on a couple of stages, of which I'm looking forward to getting the opportunity to do more of. But again, this is not about Ryan.
Yeah, I always have to ask.
We're here to have a conversation.
I always have to ask first. I'm all about the other person, but you know.
Well, then this should be a very interesting conversation because I'm the same. So give us a little bit about your story for those of you guys who read the little bio that Jordan sent me, which you can see in any of the posts. But tell us what's not in there.
Okay.
Because everybody can read a bio, right?
Yeah.
Everybody can.
Right.
But there's always stuff between the lines.
Oh, yeah.
That not many of us ever really go into depth on. So I'm going to ask you to go into depth on the between the lines.
Yeah, totally. So my story, I'll start back in high school. So I was a guy who I was always kind of just going through the motions, and I was privileged enough to have a really fortunate upbringing. You know, I had a lot of friends. I had a wonderful, supportive family, and I was always an insider. I never really had to struggle to make friends or to fit in. So I was sort of always on the inside, but deep down, I was sort of like, you know, the phrase that you usually hear is on the outside looking in. I always wanted to be somebody who was on the inside looking out. I always wanted to stand out. I always wanted to do something different. But I was always kind of afraid to take that leap until very recently, you know, when I quit my job a year and a half ago. But anyway, back in high school, you know, it was pretty clear cut for me. It was play sports. My sport of choice was soccer, and it was excel at that sport, and it was also excel in the classroom so that I can get into a good school. And it was, you know, do your extracurriculars, write well, write a good essay, apply to the right college, and then go to that right college. So I did well enough to get into Northwestern in Chicago. So then it
Just
was
down the street from me, pretty much.
so
Like an
funny.
hour and a half
Yeah,
down the
yeah,
road. But yeah.
we talked about that last time. So yeah, you're familiar with the school, and I had a great
Mhm.
experience. But then once I was there, it was very much okay. Here's what's going to be the next step, and my life was sort of dictated by people around me and society, sort of expecting me to be this person who, I would have a stable life, I would make a lot of money, I would get good grades when I was in school, and the way that I would, have a good life afterward is by going into either something like investment banking, the finance world, or going into something like consulting, right? So,
God, the world has so many consultants. Anyways,
yeah,
continue.
yeah. So, I'm very much so willing to dip my feet into anything. So I decided to get an internship in both worlds. So I had a finance internship one year, then I had a consulting internship the next. And I was proud of myself because I knew that both of those experiences weren't for me. So that I learned from doing something what I ultimately wasn't going to want to do. But then it was still sort of like this path, like, okay, it's fine. Like, you'll still be successful. Why don't you just go to school for another year and figure it out then? So I
Right.
did, and I went to Kellogg and I got my master's in management studies. And it was then that I started to scratch my itch of starting something from the ground up. So when I was a junior in college, I created an Alzheimer's awareness organization called They Forget, We Remember, in honor of my grandfather. And it was just a way to raise awareness and raise funds at Northwestern. I partnered with Northwestern's Cognitive Neurology and Alzheimer's Disease Center, and I used my master's in management study degree at Kellogg to sort of better my leadership skills and to really learn the ins and outs of running a business.
Right.
I'll be honest with you, Ryan. Like, I loved Kellogg. It was a great experience, and the work was challenging, but it wasn't that time consuming. So I had a lot of free time now to explore other opportunities. So
I love hearing somebody because I don't come from academia.
uh-huh.
So I always find it entertaining when somebody does, and then they're in a position like what you just mentioned where, oh yeah, and I had a lot of free time. Because
Yeah,
that's not what you expect when you hear somebody that went to Kellogg
right.
or went to any of those other kind of prestigious like upper echelon business schools. It's
Yeah,
not something you anticipate hearing. So
yeah.
I find that humorous.
I totally get you. But anyway, I had a lot of free time, and I think during my college years, I filled up free time with friends and fun. But now it was a year where I was a little bit more in touch with the person that I wanted to be. So I decided to start listening to personal growth and development podcasts. I was reading a lot of books in that world, and I was really loving this entrepreneurship type of information that I was hearing. So
Mhm.
I ultimately, a lot of things that I was hearing was, follow a passion or add value to other people. So I ended up working with a couple different startup companies in the food world, whether that was food delivery, restaurants. I just tried to help with marketing and communications however I could, and
Right.
a little bit of strategy here and there. I ended up starting my own startup company for a couple of months, which was really fun. And ultimately, I decided to pursue what I thought was, going to be a new, fun, different than everybody else. Like, I made the leap to outside of the norm type of position, right? So
Okay.
I got a leadership and management role with a big restaurant group called Hillstone Restaurant Group. And
Okay.
I was a 23-year-old kid who I was in charge of people who were 3 times my age, right? I was making a very stable salary. I was living in New York City in an apartment that they were paying for. Like, again, from an outsider's perspective, seemingly, living the life kind
Right.
of.
Right.
But for me, uh, I wouldn't say I was miserable, but I was not living according to my beliefs and what I wanted to bring to the world and the impact that I
Mhm.
wanted to make, right? So I was
Right.
stuck in this, 15-hour-a-day job. It was super chaotic. It was very hectic. The company itself was very traditional. I fell back into the corporate world, whereas I thought I was going into something that was creative, entertaining, innovative.
Right.
Um, so I had to learn the hard way that sometimes you have to separate hobbies from passions and going in and pursuing them. But
Right.
the only way I was going to learn that was if I dove right in. So I would never regret that decision. I'm glad that I got back in, that I jumped right into the pool and got into that world. But after 4 months, I knew it was time for me to get out of it. So then with absolutely no plan, Ryan. I quit that job and I just kind of said like, okay, what do I have to do next? Like where does my impact have to be? What did I enjoy in my experience that was, seemingly, sort of negative, sort of crazy? What have I enjoyed in all my past experiences? What am I good at? I decided the next thing I had to do had to include 3 things. And one was starting something from the ground up. Like that Alzheimer's experience is one of the best things I've ever done, led to so many opportunities. 1.
Right.
2 was it had to involve building and maintaining relationships in some way, shape, or form. It had to include people. Right. And then
as
3,
as any good organization should. We'll get to that later.
Yeah, of course. And 3, I had to come from a place where I was just constantly adding value to others. Right. So I had to.
And not in the sense of how everybody else says adding value to people right now, and it adds no value whatsoever. Anyways, continue.
Yeah. So I had been jotting down my own ideas based off of the personal growth and development stuff that I was listening to and reading, because for me, I think it's all about interpretation, right? I'm not a person who's just going to go ahead and do it. I like to ask a lot of questions. I like to create my own thoughts. I like to try out what's being told to me from like the self-help world, but then I like to cater it to my needs and my strengths and what I want to achieve from it. So I decided to do the same thing with actually Hal Elrod's The Miracle Morning. So I was writing about my morning routine, and I realized there were some things that I was doing that he said, there were some things that I was adding to it. So I ultimately wrote a book called Getting Comfy, Your Morning Guide to Daily Happiness. And COMFY is a 5-step acronym that stands for calm, openness, movement, funny, and you or your choice. So basically, it was a way for me to share with other people how in my past experience in this restaurant world where so many other people were overstressed, overworked, overtired, even though it was a seemingly negative experience for me, it was something I didn't want to ultimately pursue. I still knew that the reason why I was having a positive, optimistic outlook on it and I was still energetic at work was because of this routine and this mindset that I had going in.
Right.
So I decided to share that with other people for the last year and a half up until now. I've been doing some speaking gigs like you. I had the fortunate opportunity to give a TEDx talk.
We're going to have to talk off air about that because that's next on my list. Anyways, continue.
We could talk on air because I think it would be really helpful if anybody out there does want to talk about how to get it. It's all relationship based.
The one thing that I will say to that though is like, unlike a lot of other podcasts where they lure you in hey, let's talk about real shit, and then they end up talking business. Like this is not the business podcast that a lot of other ones out there. We just happen to be business people, but I want to this show is predominantly focused on human first. Like, okay, yeah, cool. We've got really cool business shit going on, but it's really down to the core of who we are as humans, because as I've really been diving deeper personally, like I lead off every business call that I do and have done for the last 7 to 9 months now, or actually closer to a year, with a like 5-minute mental health check. Like that's first and foremost, because if this isn't right and this isn't right, there's no amount of work that you can do that will improve either one of those. So that is imperative to have down first.
I always say, you could be the most selfless person in the entire world, but if you're not working on yourself first, then you're never going to be able to optimally help other people, right? So it's always self first. It's the self-awareness, self-reflection, self-care. Absolutely. But happy to chat about that whenever you'd like, because it is, and no, at the end of the day, it's all human based. It's all people based. That's how I got a TED Talk, and that was the nitty gritty details of the talk that I gave. So anyway, that's what I've been doing for the last year. It led to a little bit of coaching, a little bit of speaking, a lot of cool opportunities, a lot of cool people met. And it was really this pursuit of mine to allow others to get positive, to get optimistic, to overcome stress and anxiety was really the main thing, even though I'm not like a licensed medical health clinician or counselor or anything.
And here's where a disclaimer comes in, because neither am I. Like I am not a psychologist. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a clinical social worker. I'm not a psychiatrist. I do not hold a degree in any of those fields. I'm just a human with a heart who gives a shit. Like I want, because I know that when I was coming up, I didn't really have a lot of people that I could go to with, especially as a young entrepreneur and a young creative and somebody who always felt like they didn't fit inside the box. I obviously, if you don't feel like you fit in the box, you can't talk to people in the box about how you're feeling because you're outside of it. So that's why this show exists. A little history lesson for those of you guys who are just now hearing about this for the first time. This show was actually initially created out of this concept that a colleague and I had about creating this online interactive book. This online interactive book was a place where I could go in and write my story. Jordan could go in and write his story. Andrea and all these other people who are joining us on Facebook and Instagram, you guys could go on and write in your story. And the purpose of it was we could all see and learn from each other's stories while sharing our own. Now, we were broke kids at the time and didn't want to necessarily try to find money to start this interactive book. And we didn't want to use platforms like Facebook to do it because that would muddy it up. So the idea kind of just went into hiatus mode until it was reborn in March of 2018 in the form of this podcast. So it's definitely a lot about, okay, what is our experience as a human and how have we navigated those really trying times? Because and why this show is live. In fact, this show right now is being broadcast live on Facebook and Instagram simultaneously. The reason why it's live is because so much of the world and the content that we all consume on a daily basis is very produced in a way where it benefits the creator of the content rather than the viewer of the content. And if we're having a raw, real live discussion about mental health, we can't do that in an edited form because this stuff is raw. This stuff can oftentimes be scary. And we need to know that it's okay that it's scary, that it's not going to always be scary. And know that, because there are a lot of young hustlers I know that are going to watch this. And if we touch one person because of this episode, like that to me is success.
Yeah.
I don't do this for views. I don't do this for money. None of this is monetized. I don't have ads running on any of it. In fact, I take time out of my busy, productive, paying life to do this. And I know, and all of my guests do the same. Like none of us are being financially sponsored in any way on this. So, anyways, thank you for sharing that part of your story. It definitely helped put a lot into perspective. How old are you now, if you don't mind me asking?
You guess.
Well, I'm going to say like 28, 29.
All right. You're close. 24.
Jesus Christ. And I say that because like you never really know based on somebody's life experiences exactly how old they are, right? Yeah. Some of us have experienced hell at a very young age. Some of us, it doesn't happen until later. Right. So for me, it's knowing that you've accomplished all of this at such a young age and you're still going.
Appreciate that.
Because I mean, we've had 17-year-olds on this show. That was crazy.
Yeah.
And anyways, so now that we've talked about kind of the overview of your story, let's get into the little bit of the nitty gritty.
Yeah.
To kind of address bullet point 2, what are those dark moments, those obstacles, those situations that you think would have torn down anybody else, but for some reason you're still here?
Yeah.
And then what you've done, and then we'll get into what you did to overcome those here shortly.
Yeah. So right now, I know we both said we're not psychologists, nothing like that, but I love positive psychology, the whole field of positive psychology. I just applied to get my master's in applied positive psychology, so I got my fingers crossed for that. But there's this model in positive psychology that sort of dictates how the entire field is based, called the PERMA model, PERMA. And I actually wrote my application essay about this PERMA model and how I'll preface this with this, Ryan. I have had a very fortunate life. I've had an amazing upbringing, like I said in the beginning, great support network, great parents. I have not undergone anything traumatic. I have 2 grandmas who are still living and 2 grandpas who died of natural causes, like no, knock on wood, no accidents, you know, nothing like that. But I will say that I have faced a tremendous amount of adversity throughout all of this, you know, fortune that I've been provided. So in my essay, I sort of started from the beginning, and I was trying to really think about moments in my life that shaped who I was, right?
Okay.
And I go back. First and foremost, what's most important to realize is that maybe it's from my parents, 2 amazing people. Maybe it's from my brother. Maybe it's from my grandparents. Maybe it's from my friends, the people around me. But when I was 7 years old, I wanted to do a lemonade stand, right? And
as most kids do.
Yeah, exactly, as most kids do. But you'll see very shortly that this was not like most kids. I wanted to do this lemonade stand, and it was September 20th, 2001. So it was, you know, 9 days after September 11th. And I wanted to build a lemonade stand, not to make a quick buck and be gleeful about the money that we make from selling lemonade, but rather I asked my parents if my friends and I can make a lemonade stand in order to give money to the families of those affected by 9/11. So there I was, this 7-year-old who already had a concept of benevolence and of giving back, right? So I always sort of think about that that story as the first time when I realized that I always really had something innate within me to give back to other people, right? And it was, you know, this devastating time where something within me said, hey, this isn't about me right now. This is about others. So it's always been about others for me. So that's really the first experience. But then something that's more personal and near and dear to me is when I was 10 years old. It was January 1st, 2003. Yeah, I think it was 2003. My mom was complaining of back pain. And, you know, I was a young kid. I didn't really know what was going on. I was trying to figure it out. And mommy was going to the hospital, and grandma and grandpa were telling me it was, you know, maybe a pinched nerve and everything's going to be fine, right? And everything was fine. But mom came home from the hospital and she had multiple sclerosis. She had MS, right? And a lot of uncertainty was surrounding my family, and I didn't know what any of it meant. And maybe it was due to my 10-year-old naivete, but I just remember being the one who, you know, I was trying to make people smile. I was still trying to make people laugh. You know, my brother was maybe a little bit nervous about the diagnosis. My dad was obviously, you know, he had to care for, you know, a quote unquote disabled or handicapped wife, you know, like my grandparents, you know, their daughter was sick, right? So there was a lot of worry going on and uncertainty. And again, I think it was, you know, my positive attitude that allowed us to sort of take it just a moment at a time, you know, be grateful for the fact that we were still a family, that everything was okay, that it was just a sickness. It wasn't anything more devastating than that. And to speak to this PERMA model, the P stands for positive emotions, right? So going through this scenario and focusing on the positive emotions rather than the morose ones, the seemingly negative ones, I think even as a 10-year-old, I had an understanding and a grasp of that. Right?
That's phenomenal at that age. Like,
yeah. And it wasn't because I learned anything either, you know, I still attribute it to the people around me. Yeah. So I would say that was really the first hardship I had to overcome. And it wasn't even really something that I knew I was doing, but I do think looking back, it was something that was important and continued to be important because, you know, even sometimes we joke like, my mom's MS, like my brother, for example, you know, he was able to start joking about it too. Like we showed up at the MS walk this one year and there was so much, you know, traffic in the parking lot and we couldn't get a spot. And my brother's just like, yeah, like maybe if we tell him you have MS, then you can get one of the handicap spots. Right. So it was a way for us to just, you know, relieve some stress with laughter and happiness and smiling. Right. Like my thing is I always want to make one person smile every day. Right. So that started when I was age 10. You know, moving forward, I talked about the soccer stuff and how I was a very good soccer player. I was the #1 goalie in New York State, actually, from like 9th to 11th grade. And thank you. I appreciate that. I'm no longer anywhere near that good. I actually can't really even play goalie anymore. because my back and my knees. But anyway, there I was again, like this person who I thought I had everything. I thought everything had gone right for me, right? Like my team was one of the best in the country. I was one of the best in the state. You know, I had opportunities to play at different or to play in front of different coaches in order to go play at different colleges. And I probably was in touch with about 25 schools. And, you know, Ryan, I had to get 25 no's. And the no's were really difficult because it was something that was outside of my control, or at least what they were telling me. And each of the coaches would say, you know, you have the hard work, you have the skills, you have the technique, but you don't necessarily have the height or the physicality that we're looking for. And that was something that I couldn't change, right?
Right.
So that was very hard to hear. And I got so close so many times. I was, you know, I think it was 6 schools where it was between me and a couple other guys, and they just decided to go a different route. So I had to really get close, and then get shot down, which was my first real adversity.
That speaks volumes to anybody out here who's listening or watching this right now, or will be listening or watching it in the replay. Like, adversity and stuff like that and rejection is so hard to deal with.
Yeah.
Like, it's and to do it with a smile on your face is even more challenging because guys, like, this going out and chasing your dream and building an empire thing doesn't happen overnight. Like,
yeah, not even close.
And that's the unfortunate thing about social media, right? We're in this era where whether we're subconsciously doing it or actively doing it, we're always comparing ourselves to other people. And this person's further along than I am, and I should have that too. And then you add that to athletics.
Yeah.
In your case, like, now it's an easy comparison, or it's easy. Well, these guys are better than me because they have this, this, and this, or they got picked and I didn't.
Right.
And that's a messed up headspace to be in, especially when you're still, in theory, going through adolescence. And dealing with not only the stresses of going through adolescence, but also the stresses of then being rejected on top of it. And whether other people are projecting onto you, but you're projecting onto yourself a misappropriated expectation of yourself, because we're always hardest on ourselves, guys. Always. Anyways.
It's so funny you say, you know, doing it with a smile on my face, because getting back to this, like, how I pushed through and why I think I was able to differ and overcome the adversity is because just because I got a no from every single school did not mean I stopped trying to play at college. So I was accepted to Northwestern based on academics, and I decided to train my ass off in soccer. And I got in touch with the coach. So the R in PERMA stands for relationships. So I valued the relationships that I can make. I feel confident in my communication, reaching out, taking initiative. So I did that. I got in touch with the coach. I was invited based on my, you know, just my drive and my desire to be a part of the team to their training camp, their preseason training camp. I practiced almost every single day. And ultimately, I was asked to be a practice player on the team. For other reasons, I ended up turning that down. But anyway, that's the E in PERMA stands for engagement. Right? So when facing adversity, when doing something that is so outside of the norm, engagement is something that you're just fully immersed in, right? It's the thing that you want to do every single day. It's the thing that keeps you up at night. It's the thing that wakes you up in the morning. So soccer was the engagement for me, and having the mindset of I must achieve. I'm not going to stop. I really do not want this experience that was outside of my control to control me and take over the person that I am and can become. So because of that engagement in the activity, I was able to go back and at least be invited to be a part of the team.
Well, I mean, that's a fascinating thing in and of itself, because, I mean, you got the opportunity, but then you're like, nah, I got other things.
Yeah.
Then you put yourself back in the control. Like, you then had the power in the situation rather than the situation having power over you.
Yeah.
And I think you hit a lot of very important messages as it relates to the overcoming or the movement through those dark periods of time, because they're going to exist whether we want them to or not.
Yeah.
So it's, what are you going to do in the times when they do exist to move through and past them?
Yep.
Because
Exactly.
like, you all know this stuff's not easy. I mean, we're speaking to the entrepreneurs here and the creatives who may not always necessarily fit in because they just won't.
Yeah.
And so in order to kind of move through that, I mean, there's a lot of adversity. There's a lot of self-doubt and that behavior that just, if you let it, will destroy you.
Yeah.
And I mean, I faced it, and I know everybody who's listening or has listened or will listen has faced this too. Yeah. So
totally. Yeah.
So I mean, that was great insights there. And I hope whomever needed to hear this heard that. I had somebody, I did an Instagram live for like the first time in months a couple weeks ago. Mm-hmm. And somebody tuned in and then sent me a message afterwards, and they're like, man, I wish more people would tune into stuff like this. I'm like, why? Everybody who's listening is listening for a reason. I don't want people who are just going to be here to be here. I want people who are actively engaged or want to gain something or are struggling with their own mental health issues and want to find ways that they can try to adapt in their own world to kind of move through what they're struggling with. Because what's worked for me and what's worked for Jordan might not work for you, but you're going to get something from this that you'll be able to adapt in your own space that will work for you in the time that it's supposed to.
Exactly. Yeah.
So now that we're kind of moving into that third bullet point of the conversation, what are some of those things that are really exciting? But before you answer that, I want to take this kind of moment to identify that we know that there are people who are out there that are struggling. Whether you're listening to this right now or listening to this in the recording after the fact, or you're listening and you know somebody who's struggling, it's on you to reach out. If you know somebody who's struggling, if you yourself are struggling, and I'm going to throw Jordan under the bus on this one too, we're resources. We're here for you. I'm here for you so much so that my cell phone number is in my Instagram profile, not an assistant's phone number, not some other person, my phone that I'm talking to Instagram on right now, not Facebook, but you can literally hit the call button, or you can send me a message. Like I want you guys to know that I am here. Yes, I lead a very insanely busy life, and I know Jordan does too, but I know that when I was going through those dark times in my world, I just wanted somebody to listen. And oftentimes when you're struggling too, you just want somebody to listen. Yeah. And we're here for you. This community is here for you. We have a lot of members of this Open Heart Collective community. I mean, I think Jordan makes guest number 43. Wow. And really no end in sight. And that's there because we are all here for you. This world needs more people who are willing to be open and vulnerable, even in the times where it's not so pleasant to.
Yeah.
And it's that important. Yeah. But
can I add something to that, Ryan?
Absolutely.
Two things. One, we're just so super aligned because my phone number and my email address are all over the internet. So please feel free to reach out to me. I answer literally every single thing. Like, I'm one of those people who my inbox, I have 0 messages unread at all times because I just want to get back to everybody who reaches out. So that's number one. But number two is I'm so with you in just reaching out to somebody, saying, I just wrote an article recently where the extent of the article, the whole message was so simple. It was just ask anybody, somebody whose day is often mundane and monotonous, go up to them and say, hey, how are you doing today? Right? Because that today too is so important because so many people have different types of days. But what I'm talking about here is going up to somebody who is stuck in almost like a robotic way, right? Somebody who feels like they can't get out of something that they're currently doing. So I'm talking about your Chipotle workers who are just doing, burrito, beans, bowl, whatever. Like ask them how they're doing, right? Like any cool customers today, get them outside of their norm, right? Walk up, ask the person who is giving you groceries, right? Like ask them what they're doing over the weekend, ask them how their weekend was, you know, just allow them to experience something that is outside of their day to day. And I think that is huge because so many of us just go through the day going through the motions, right? And the second we take a step outside of the motions, the second, you know, you and I, people like us, Brian, push other people to experience things in a different way, those are the memories. Those are the things that you want to incorporate into your lives. And those are the healthy components that you're going to remember, not only for yourself, but you're going to do it for somebody else next time, right? And then it becomes sort of a domino effect.
And that is so impactful. Like I mean, prime example of that, right? So last week, I'm an avid Starbucks user, got the app, all that kind of stuff. And I have the same one that I go to every day.
Yeah.
I mean, I've almost gotten to a position of robotic behavior because I have some responsibilities on a daily basis. I mean, I've got a contract relationship with a particular organization that pays me well to be there every day. So I'm there every day. And I almost get into that robotic movement where I take the same route, the same place, almost the same time every single day. Now, thankfully, I have this podcast. I have the fact that I'm building an agency. I have the fact that I'm running a record label. So oftentimes my drive is also mixed with phone calls or listening to emails because I obviously got to drive safe, right? And trying to kind of dictate through what I want my day to be. But at the same point in time, a lot of it's going through Starbucks. And in the morning, because I go there so frequently, they know me by name. And them just asking me like, how's my day or what's going on or writing my name on the cup. Like such a small thing has such huge merit. And because it's like, okay, well now like somebody took a little bit of extra steps. So now I'll routinely like pay for the person behind me or lately I've been going inside. They're like, you have legs.
That's
because the same people see me in the drive-thru every morning.
Yeah.
But because it's been so busy there the last couple of weeks, because we've had a big conference in my hometown, like the drive-thru's been out the door and around the corner and behind the place. And I'm just like, okay, well, this isn't going to work. So I go in and then I interact and engage with them in that capacity. And I mean, just see the smiles works.
Exactly.
And we all have those dark times and those really challenging moments, whether you're an entrepreneur and you're trying to build something, or you're just doing a 9-to-5 because it's your passion, you work in a bank, or you're in the medical space, or whatever it is. It's your passion. It's not mine. Don't take what Jordan and I, I'm sorry, I got Jake just looked in on Instagram. What Jordan and I are doing, like, we are doing this because this is what drives us. Yeah. What drives you is different, and that's okay. Like, I think that gets failed to be mentioned when we're in social media land, because so many of us are, that entrepreneur talk is so kitschy and in right now that, oh man, everybody wants to be an entrepreneur. No, you don't. Like, this shit's lonely. Like, really lonely. Thankfully, I have an amazing network of people like Jordan in my world. Otherwise, it would suck. But for those of you guys who are struggling, take Jordan's advice to heart. Like, when you're able to deploy joy on somebody else, you're just going to get it brought back to you. Yep. And I'm a very big believer in karma and knowing that everything is there because it's supposed to be, whether you want it there or not. Yeah. And that even means the dark times and the struggles, because I know, guys, like, everything that I have right now, I've worked for. Mm-hmm. The reputation, the mistakes, the positives, the not so positives, like, all of that I've earned. Yeah. And every one of those moments has me be here, that I can have these conversations and know that it does get better. Because, guys, unfortunately, while I did have an amazing upbringing, much like Jordan, mine was a lot darker. I mean, I've tried to take my own life 4 times. but I'm still here. And I know I'm still here because this is one of the things I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to help other people who maybe are struggling with the same stuff I struggled with know that it is okay and that you can go out and do amazing things.
Yep.
And whether you always believe in yourself or not, there are people in your corner no matter what.
Yeah.
So,
Totally true. Yeah.
There's
Awesome.
one really cool thing that I know I have not put the work into that needs to have been put into. But you guys who've been listening to this for a while now probably have heard me talk about the app. It's going to be such a project, and it will get launched. Whether it gets launched in the timetable that I want it to be launched in or not, that's soon to be known. But and Jordan, you can attest to this. We were talking about this.
Yeah, we chatted about it. Yeah.
One of the things that plagues a lot of us who are struggling with mental health is an underlying anxiety issue, right? Too many options is way too many way too many options is so much that we get overwhelmed and we don't make a decision. And oftentimes that decision comes at the crux of our own health. So how can we move past that and find opportunity? Because we can't seek guidance for mental health on Google because we get 80 million search results, especially if you're in a major metropolitan area like New York or Chicago, where you type in depression Chicago or depression New York, and you're going to get 80 million search results because that's how Google works. I want to make it easier. So we're in the process of developing an app and building out the database for this right now called I'm Struggling With. And it's a very simple app to use in theory. Still designing out everything and working through all the how-tos. But it will be an easy app where you literally just fill in the blank with what you're struggling with. And based on where you are in the world, yes, not just in the US, but the world, we're going to point resources to you that are going to help you with what you're struggling with and give you the option to call them, send them a message, or go to where they are if you're in that much of a need, because we want to give you 3 options always. Not 1 million, not 10 million, not 500, 3. And those 3 options are going to be based solely on what you need most. Anyways,
yeah.
Now that I've proliferated on that for long enough,
no, it's a great idea. Yeah,
we haven't talked about what's exciting in your world yet, so I want to make sure I give you time for that.
Yeah.
So what is exciting in that world of Jordan Gross?
Yeah, so very much in line with our conversation just now of getting people outside of their day-to-day and making them feel a little bit different, putting a smile on their face. Very recently, actually in November, I was driving in an Uber, and I'm the kind of person who I don't want to just sit in the back quietly. I want to engage. I want to talk. I want to have a conversation, or else they're just driving around all day in silence, which could be really lonely and really sad. So we're driving along the East River in New York City, and I saw this boat called Cloud9. And I just decided to blurt out like, hey man, what does Cloud9 mean to you? And his response just blew me away, Ryan. He started talking about the day he got married, the day he had his children, the day he moved from his country to the United States, the day he was able to make enough money to go back to his home country. He talked about having, how he wishes to have grandchildren. He talked about so many different things. Mm-hmm. And after that, I just put pencil to paper and I outlined a book idea where I would be asking people what Cloud9 means to them. How do they have these transformative life experiences? How do they have these moments of euphoria? And what do these scenarios have in common? What's different about these scenarios? And what I actually did was I started interviewing people. And it wasn't just about a lifetime of Cloud9, because those are only, there were only like maybe 8 or 9 events that I was hearing over and over again, but it turned more so into how can you have a Cloud9 moment every single day? How can you have something to look forward to every single day so that no matter what, like as dreary as it may be, you had the worst day you can possibly think of, there is still something that you had. And if it's in the morning, it's something that allowed you to say, okay, my morning was still great. If it's at night, it allows you to say, okay, you know, I still have this one thing to look forward to. How can I have this moment of true and pure bliss every single day? So what I've been doing is just talking to hundreds of people, basically about their happiest moments, their happiest days of their lives, their happiest experiences, and putting that into a book. And that book is actually going to be a fiction book, because I want people to, just like we said, I want people to interpret for themselves rather than tell them exactly how other people are living their lives. I want to create a story that shows how somebody lived his life, and then you can make the decision as to what you want to incorporate, what you want to leave out, and make your own choices moving forward.
Right.
So it's called The Journey to Cloud 9. Everything I'm doing is all about living life on Cloud 9. And I think an important disclaimer, an important distinction here is that as much as I love studying happiness and positivity and optimism, I don't believe that it's healthy to want to be on Cloud 9 at all times. Right. I think that actually a cloud, quote unquote, is elevated. Cloud 9 is up higher in the sky if you experience the full range of emotions, if you go through adversity, if you do things that make you feel uncomfortable, if you do things that are embarrassing, that you're afraid of, right? So I do not, you know, Cloud 9 is not all about feeling happy and smiley every single moment of every single day, but it is about having the days. Oh, my Instagram, my phone died. Sorry, Instagram.
So Instagram, give me 1 second.
Yeah.
Instagram, to catch the full clip of this, go over to Facebook. The link is in my profile. And but I will leave this in the feed so you guys can check it out for the next 24 hours. But be on the lookout, because the full links will be coming soon. And to everybody who's tuned in, thank you so much. We'll see you again soon. Sorry.
Yeah, no, sorry again to Instagram. I didn't realize how little battery I had. But
I mean, it happens. It wouldn't be the first time. Like, I've had episodes where like the phone will literally like be overheated, and then the computer will end. Like, I've had one where the guy was like very like aggro looking, and it was just frozen.
Yeah.
And that was it.
That's funny.
And then it phone, and then computer, and then it was done.
Oh, it's funny.
So anyways, we can finish up on here.
Yeah, but yeah, anyways, what I was saying to wrap that up was basically, it's not all about having happy moments of every single day, but it is about having the one outlet or the one release where you know that there is something to look forward to. You know there's a reason why you're pushing forward.
Right.
And there's just, you know, so many things that I've learned and discovered that I share on my website, and that I'll be sharing in my book, and that I share when I work with people one-on-one, and that I share in my content, that really, you know, proves that these lives are worth living, you know, and even in the crappiest, dullest, shittiest of days, there is so much to learn from even those experiences. The fact that you move past it is a success in and of itself. The fact that you're here to tell that story. Because at the end of the day, for me, it is always about the story that I want and I'm going to tell looking back.
Right. I mean, that's so true. I mean, it's life is, and this is going to sound cliche and corny, and I really don't care, but life is truly what you make it. Yeah. Like we all have dark times, as I kind of alluded to. I mean, I've had dark ones too. And I even have some now. Like I've struggled. I've had a lot of like conflicting emotions on like professionally where I want to take things to, because I see where I want to go, but the steps to get there are a little hazy still. So it's a lot of like, and I've got 11 years on you. So it's just like it. And I fall into that struggle of like comparing myself to other people, and like, this person's got more opportunity, they're doing more, like, why are they getting more? And then of course I talk to the people behind the scenes in some of those organizations, and they're like, yeah, that's really not that good. Yeah. Like, so it kind of comes down to life isn't, or the grass of life isn't always greener on the other side. Yeah. And what you do to kind of push through and allow those people who believe in you to believe in you. I think that's the struggle that a lot of us have, is like, myself including. we're like, oh, we have a lot of people who believe in us, but we don't oftentimes believe enough in ourselves. So it's like, well, shit. Well, all of these guys believe in me, but I don't see it. Like, there's still more to do. Like, and we're always hardest on ourselves. So as we get ready to wrap up here, what is that? What are those words of wisdom or kind of the takeaway you want people to have from your perspective? We obviously know that people will do what they do with this and take what they take, but if you had any words of wisdom, what would those be?
Yeah. So what's top of mind for me right now is I heard a great talk, which I could not agree with more, from Elizabeth Gilbert, and she's the author of Eat, Pray, Love. And basically, I'll try to summarize this as quickly as possible. She was somebody who, for basically 20 years of her life, she was saying, follow your passion, follow your passion, follow your passion. Look what it did for me. Like, writing was doing nothing for me. And then all of a sudden, because I loved it so much and I put all my time and effort into it, I was able to come out with Eat, Pray, Love, and look what it's done for my life and look what it's done for so many people, right?
Right.
And Elizabeth Gilbert got an email one day from somebody where she, the email was from somebody at one of her talks where it was all about passion and follow what makes you happy, follow what gives you energy, this and that. And it basically said, you know what, Elizabeth, I wanted to come to your talk and get some inspiration, right? And obviously I knew it was going to be about passion, but your talk made me feel so much worse. And it's because for me, you describe passion in such a simplistic way, right? It's something that, it keeps you up at night. You can't fall asleep. It's something that totally energizes you. It's something that should be so obvious to find. And she basically said in the email, I'm a smart person. If I knew passion was right in front of me, I would be able to see that. But I don't think that I have a true passion, right? So what Elizabeth Gilbert actually did in this last talk was she said, you know what? I don't want anybody to follow their passions anymore. I think that actually is leading to a new mental health problem, that everybody should have a passion, right?
Interesting. Okay.
So what I'm here to say and sort of echo Elizabeth Gilbert's comments is I always heard that phrase too, follow your passion, follow your passion, follow your passion. But that's a really hard thing to do, right? I think in the self-help world in and of itself, you're told a lot of things, but you don't get the how a lot of the time. Like, how do you understand what passion is? How do you go about finding it if you don't have the time, if you don't have the resources, if you don't have any idea of what passion is, right? So the very simple solution to understanding the passion problem, and the one place I don't agree is that I think we should still try to find a passion, but I don't think it starts with just finding the passion. I think it starts with following your curiosity.
Absolutely.
I think it starts with diving a little bit deeper into the TV show where your eyes open up a little bit wider because you're interested in that subject. I think it starts with reading an article and wanting to learn more by having a conversation with the person that wrote it, right? And reaching out and trying to get in contact with that person.
That's the epitome of my life, brother.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, if we could sum up, like, if my life had a byline, that would be it.
Yeah. And you know what?
Curiosity.
That's wonderful, because the curiosity is what's ultimately going to lead to the passion, right? Because if you're curious and you're following, the little head tilt each way in different directions, one direction might lead to something that you ultimately hate, AKA me, I didn't hate it, but like restaurant industry, not a great experience, but I still followed the curiosity. But what I was able to do, and something that's so important to remember, is even in those experiences that you don't ultimately pursue, you still need to have some takeaways. You still need to have some skills that you took away, some learning, some key understandings and beliefs from those experiences, so that you can apply them to what you do next, right?
Absolutely.
And it's what you do next, that next little head tilt where something that you're curious about piques your interest a little bit more. And then you dive a little bit deeper, and then you dive a little bit deeper. And then it's this full immersion where that's a passion. That becomes a passion. And then that passion, for you and I, Ryan, it's that passion becomes a purpose. And the purpose is really like the general feel of what we're trying to do here. And that's pretty much, I'd say, ultimately, it comes down to helping people one at a time, right? So
and
that's a lot at the end of the day, but it takes a lot of digging to figure out.
It has. And I mean, my journey's been 8.5 years in the making.
Yeah.
Like, to trust me, 3 years ago, you wouldn't have caught me dead doing video.
Yeah.
And now I've produced over 400 pieces of video content. Like,
Yeah.
or I put out 400 pieces of video content. I don't know who's produced them. It is really about finding what makes you curious, about what kind of makes you smile and gets that the ideas going in the back of your mind, and driving forward on those full tilt. Like, I mean, I have a lot of different passions.
Yeah.
They all just happen to be pertaining around one particular way to approach them. Yeah. But I mean, a lot of my project, I don't do anything if it doesn't light a fire in me.
Yeah.
That's why for a long time I didn't do the podcast. I wasn't feeling it.
Yeah.
That's why occasionally I'll take 3-month hiatuses from social media because I'm not feeling it, or because I'm so inundated in the world of being involved in building up companies and being the practitioner. I don't necessarily always convey that because I don't follow the Gary V mantra of document everything. Not everything needs to be documented, but the important times do. And that's why this show exists.
Yeah.
Anyways,
awesome,
so if somebody wanted, as we wrap up, if somebody wanted to get in touch with you now, obviously I'm including the links, but what is the #1 platform for people to find you on?
Yeah. So just like you, I believe in helping people overcome choice paralysis. So very simple, journeytocloud9.com. That's all spelled out, journey, T-O, cloud, N-I-N-E.com. And you can find anything you want to know about myself, about Cloud9, about happiness, about all that I'm doing. It's on there. And it's basically just, videos, interviews about finding that Cloud9 moment and that Cloud9 life.
Awesome, Jordan. Thank you again so much for being the first guest back as we get back into season 3 of the Open Heart Collective here. Now, for those of you guys who are curious about what next steps are, we will be back next week. Now, in the previous seasons, I was going Tuesday and Friday. My life won't allow for that right now. So it's down to 1 day a week. But that means these videos will be available on YouTube and in the audio form via anchor.fm by Friday. So you guys will be able to get it sooner, which means, Jordan, I'll share it with you. To everybody who's been a part of this and who's supported this mission since the beginning, thank you so much. I'm without words is the amount of gratitude that I have for each of the guests that I have had and will continue to have. Your stories inspire me and will live on because of this. So thank you so much. And everybody else, until next time, I want to leave you on this mantra. Now, I might mess it up because I haven't done it in a while, because I haven't done a video in a while. But anyways,
you got this.
So I ended a lot of videos over the last couple of years with this saying of be happy, have fun, and hustle hard. Now, at superficial, okay, yeah, everybody has a cliche mantra in the social media world. I get it. But I say be happy because if you are not happy, you need to find something that will make you happy. You have to do something that makes yourself happy every day, because being happy is important, because the opposite sucks. And I know because I've been there. Number 2 is have fun, because if there's no fun in your life, you're doing it wrong. Life is not always going to be easy. It's going to be hard. It's going to suck. I get it. But if you're not focused on having fun, just like you're not focused on finding happiness, it's not going to work out for you. You're going to become stuck. And I don't want you to be I don't want you to be stuck. I want you to be unstuck. And last but certainly not least, hustle, because everything is going to take work. Jordan and I are here because of the work we've done. We will continue to be here because we will do the work that is necessary every single day to get us to where we want to be. So it's important to do that. But most importantly, and I added as a little disclaimer on the bottom of this, is breathe. Even if you just say that word out loud once a day, it'll force you to breathe. Really, really cool thing. So until next time, guys, and Jordan, thank you, everybody. I really, truly appreciate it. And we will be back again next week. Thanks, guys.
Thanks so much, Ryan.
You can stay on for a second. I'm just ending the live broadcast.